Hello, I'm host Eric, host of Talking with Famous People. I have to recap the story so far, in case you're joining in midway. At the beginning of the story, the god of mortal time died. The god of mortal time was at the villa of the gods with the other gods, most of the other gods, and was standing beside a railing, beside Campago Relegati, the first of the Relegatis from New Hampshire. At that moment, Relegati leaned over the railing to look out over the edge, and it broke. And while he was young enough to scramble back, the god of time was not. He fell and plummeted to his death, off of the edge of the plateau that the railing demarcated the edge of. Interruptively and Campago get the bones, they go on their way. The Duchess, meanwhile, is living in New Hampshire, ruling over there, and Interruptively makes a deal with her. He says, if you'll build my church and let me copulate with you, I will let you live for potentially 1,000 years. And the Duchess, after some finagling, made the deal, agreed to it, copulated with God. God pushed the bone of the god of time into her chest, and she is slowly aging. One of the reasons being the death of the god of time caused uneven and even time to split. So no longer is it even time, now it's uneven time, which means different places in the world can advance technologically at different rates, whereas before they all advanced at the same rate. The Duchess lives in the slowest moving spot in the world, the slowest moving country in the world, and as a consequence, her body, because of the bone of the god of time, is linked to wherever she's standing. She goes to places really fast, and she's going to age really fast. As long as she stays in New Hampshire, she'll age very slowly. So, also in our story, she's gotten pregnant. She's had a child. She has sent that child off. He has ended up in the Church of Curtis to be trained, and he is much older than he looks because he's got the same slow aging thing as his mom. Not from the bone of the god of time, however, it's because he's half god. And Elias Cork is his name, and he leads the acolytes of the Church of Curtis by casting an illegal spell on one of them and then bailing. Meanwhile, Duke Grondovich has been making super soldiers, trying to make super soldiers in Ilmingston, and he and his assistant Yallers have just discovered the ability to make blueprints of your own, so that you no longer have to pause. Now, additionally, the Duchess has sent Corporal Wisdom with some troops up to the pass between Ilmingston and New Hampshire, and that's all we know so far with them. Having established all of this, Elias Cork is now the subject of our attention again, as he returns to New Hampshire from Portugal, where the Church of Curtis is located. And he arrives in New Hampshire and sees the big cathedral of Squalor. Now he goes towards his cathedral of Squalor, and he walks in, and it looks exactly the same as the Cathedral of Curtis, because of course there's only one cathedral blueprint that's in existence as of yet. Keep in mind, Duke Grondovich just learned how to make your own blueprints. You no longer have to channel Informaticatron because Luciano Relegati, the son of Campago, had used a carving that he had made as a gift to Accutron, and it turned Accutron into a wooden dragon, and as a consequence, the restriction on direct human access to those truths of space was lifted, and no longer did those truths have to be channeled through Accutron. However, nobody thought for quite a while to actually come up with the idea of making our own blueprint until, of course, the very play-minded Duke Grondovich came up with it. So that's where they are over there. Now, Elias Cork, he walks into this cathedral, and it looks just like in terms of design, the Cathedral of Curtis, but it looks nothing like that in terms of the execution. Whereas the Church of Curtis is very clean and orderly and attentive to its purpose, the Church of Squalor is quite the contrary. There are a couple of empty rooms near the front, and then there's some rooms with just a bunch of old, like, semi-valuable crap, like rugs and not gold, but some kind of pewter mugs and stuff like that. Then he looks around and he's like, well, he didn't know where else he can go. all he's ever known is being an acolyte in a church, and so he didn't, for lack of anything better, he continues looking around, even though he's a little off-put by this at first. He finds what appears to be the bishop's office, or a bishop's office. It's got a sign on his door, it says bishop on it, and he knocks, nobody's in there. The door swings open, and there's a guy there sitting in the chair, and he's kind of passed out, and he's got a bishop's hat on, and he's got an empty bottle of whiskey in front of him. So Elias just is like, well, this guy's not going to do any good. Backs out, and he runs into a group of people around the age he appears to be, which is early 20s, perhaps late teens. Of course, Elias is actually like 50 or 60 years old, because he's aging a lot more slowly than a human being would, because he's half God. So it is here, at this moment, that Elias Cork is first introduced to the ways of Squalor. And although it is 10 in the morning, this group is just rolled out of bed and is making their way to the Hall of Squalor, where they begin to consume their morning's ales and beers, which is considered breakfast alcohol, as opposed to hard alcohol for later in the day. They also, he for the first time smokes marijuana, and then the next morning, things get a little hazy, and the next morning he wakes up, and there's a girl in his bed, and he panics for a second, but he realizes his wallet's still in his pocket and everything's cool, and he suddenly goes, oh, hell yeah, I want to be here. And he goes to talk to his new friends and find out how this whole thing works. He says, listen, I want to be here. And they're like, well, do you have the money? Because the Church of Squalor, you don't qualify, you buy your way in. And once you buy your way in, you basically are supported by the taxing of the peasantry. And you just sit around and just drink all the time, I guess. So, Elias does have the money because, of course, the Church of Curtis had set aside money for him, specifically, as he grew up, in order so that he would, if he didn't make it in the church, since he was an unusual case, an orphan and all that stuff, that he'd have some funds. So he had those with him, and he had sufficient to buy his way into the church. So the people set him up with the bishop, and they woke the bishop up and got him some water and a small glass of brandy to just sort of take the edge off. And the bishop wakes up, and he says the same thing that that the acolyte said. He said, well, do you have the money? And he said, yes, but I want not just a regular acolyte position. And the bishop's like, huh? And he said, I want to be your secretary. And the bishop's like, okay, just give me the money. So the bishop pockets the money. Elias is now his secretary. And Elias takes all the things that he's learned from the Church of Curtis, starts applying them here. And Elias is extremely bright. He's the son of Triple, and he is a schemer, a little bit. So what he does is he starts ingratiating himself with the church. Hierarchy. Not sure how he's going to play it out, but sure that an opportunity will present itself. And so, as we leave the scene of the end of the first half of the book, basically, Elias Cork is settled in his final home, Church of Squalor. The Duchess is settled in to her concerns about Elmington and her plans to prevent anything bad from happening because things are going swimmingly. And, of course, Brigadier Relegati has been working on the Duchess of the State, screwing around. He's obsessed with a bunch of different little things, a little kid still. His dad, Luciano's getting older. Still has all the stuff he collected. He's got that scale from the Dragon God Actron. He's got the bone from God of Time in the sack in his room. And let's see what happens.